Just when you think you have the transfer portal strategy all figured out, something happens and completely changes the equation. This is the Lockon Ole Miss Podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member at Ole Miss and a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports. Today on the show, we talk about the emergence in the portal of Colorado Buffaloes athlete Dylan Edwards, and we talk about what that strategy to replace Quinshon Judkins was and what this does to that strategy. We talk about what bringing in another Dexter McCluster type running back would look like for the Ole Miss Rebels. We break down the running back room as it sits currently. And we talk about Chris Beard and Ole Miss basketball getting a commitment from Shapadulla from Virginia Tech and why this basketball team is growing rapidly. This is the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers that make the show what it is. Still time to join the Grove Collective and see Jaxson Dart and Eli Manning in the Manning Center on May 6th. Go to thegrovecollective.com and join today. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admitted I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on the classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free at the App Store or on Google Play. Now, an interesting situation happened. I've done videos for the better part of the last 3 weeks about the strategy involving with Ole Miss and their transfer portal recruitment of running backs. Then, when all is basically in focus and you think everything is figured out, a monkey wrench gets thrown into the gears. Now you have a situation to where they have taken Jacory, Croskey, Merritt, right? Running back out of New Mexico, 189 carries, 1,190 yards, 17 touchdowns. They've taken Henry Parrish Jr., who had 100 carries, 625 yards, and 6 touchdowns. And they've had a visit from Trent Howland from Indiana, who's on other visits currently. Last season had 75 carries, 354 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So you thought naturally that you had a decent idea of where this running back room sits. And then all of a sudden, Dylan Edwards enters the transfer portal and the calculus for all of that changes. Now, I will say this about Dylan Edwards. I do not think that Ole Miss fans and football fans in general needs to look at this football player as a true running back the same way you would Jacory, Croskey, Merritt, or Henry Parrish, or even Trent Howland. I don't think you can look at him that way. Dylan Edwards is a Dexter McCluster type player, and yes, I realize he played running back at Ole Miss, but Dexter McCluster was really a Percy Harvin type player that was a true athlete, to where you could line him up all over the place. You could play the matchup game a little bit with him, and that would make your offense a little bit better than it was. He had to play running back because honestly, he had to. After Ed Orgeron left and Ben Jarvis Green Ellis graduated, the running back position was kind of backed up at that point. So Dexter McCluster kind of had to do that over the 2009-2008 season. But that's not what he was meant to do. He was meant to be a Swiss Army knife, somebody that can make the other players around him better because he was going to attract attention. And that is the type of player that Dylan Edwards is. He was a true freshman at Colorado a year ago. Running the ball, he had 76 carries, 321 yards, and a touchdown. This is like a 5'9", 175-pound running back. He is a true Dexter McCluster type comp for what he can do. But if you look at him on the receiving side, he had 36 catches, nearly 300 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He is doing a lot of work as a pass catcher already. And seeing that and the way that Lane Kiffin used Elijah Moore in 2020, does everybody remember that? The way that Lane Kiffin used Elijah Moore. kind of gives you a hint of maybe where they're looking at the moment. The funny thing is on this thing, I started seeing in my comments over the course of yesterday or the day before, whenever that was. And I was like, okay, that doesn't matter. Then the next day this popped up. So maybe it was right. So I'm going to give credit to Unrivaled NW, who said, look for Dylan Edwards' staff connections in play. I think he deserves props for that because when nobody else was talking about it, he was talking about it. And he got my attention with that. So thank you, Unrivaled NW. Now, he wasn't the only one talking about it. This is Brad Crawford from 24/7. Source tells 24/7 Sports that Kansas State and Ole Miss are the two programs to watch for Colorado running back transfer Dylan Edwards, who had 159 total yards and 4 touchdowns in the opener last season as a true freshman. This is weird, and I understand whenever you look at the thing and he's listed as a running back, yes, I can understand why people might freak out if Ole Miss was going to take 4 running backs. And my interview I did with Michael Borky that's going to air on Sunday, I literally asked him about Ole Miss taking 4 running backs. But that is because there's no real way to describe where this player goes. Dylan Edwards is a super athlete type player. In a perfect world, and we'll talk about this more in the second segment, you line him up in the slot, and he is a seam route killer, somebody that the linebackers know they can't run with. Safeties have to give him a little bit more pad, and that opens up other stuff. You can't double team Tre Harris if you put Dylan Edwards on that side of the field because the safety has to be available to run over the top of this player as well. You're going to see a lot more zone defense. You're going to see them do and take steps to make it safer on the defense, because let's look at this offense for a second. Okay. Let's just sit back and look at this offense, and we'll talk about Dylan Edwards a little bit more in the second segment. But looking at the offense, Jaxson Dart, quarterback, Heisman candidate. Everybody knows about him. Running backs. These are the running backs that they have already signed to go with Ulysses Bentley and Kedrick Reesenow. You have Jacory, Croskey, Merritt. Like I said, we did the numbers a little bit early in the show. Henry Parrish Jr. And possibly Trent Howland. That is the running back position to go with Tre Harris out wide on one side. The other side, either Juice Wells or Deion Smith. Slot receivers, Caden Lee, Jordan Watkins. Weapons are all over this offense. The offensive line has gotten a lot better and bigger as well when you add Nate Coleppo and Diego Pounds and those guys to the offensive unit. A player like Dylan Edwards would give you a plus version of what Caden Lee can do. They're both quicker than a hiccup. They're going to do their side-to-side stuff. Caden Lee is a typical slot-type wide receiver. But add in Dylan Edwards the fact that he can take the top off of the defense all by himself. He is going to make Deion Smith and Tre Harris and Caden Prieskorn more effective wide receivers because of the threat of what he could do down the field. There's going to be 2 types of people in this transfer portal window cycle. There's 2 types of people you can count on. First of all, there's the one that no matter what, add. They want, no matter what, you don't have enough. Always add more. And I get that philosophy. I really do. And you are going to have the people that's like, no, we're good enough. We're good enough. No, don't do that. Recruit this instead. And they think they're there essentially mentally, or they just want all of this drama to stop. They want this going. They don't want people talking about over and over prospects coming into their program. They don't like that. They like certainty. They like everything to be completely organized. And whenever it gets out of organization, it becomes haywire. A little bit, I'm kind of that way in the fact that I'm very routine mandated. So whenever my day is not in the routine, it's very uncomfortable feeling. I could be having a situation like Monday to where I went and saw the Tigers play the Rays. But because that forced me to have to do an extra interview on Sunday and get my show done a little bit earlier on Monday, it completely threw everything off. It took me to probably the second or third inning to where I was feeling right. I could actually enjoy what was going on. So I get that. Dylan Edwards listed as a running back would freak people out. It wouldn't look like a fourth running back is getting taken. I don't think that you need to count him necessarily as a running back. This is not, when I call him an athlete, I don't mean it like these ranking services that like Rivals and On3 and 247, to where whenever they rate somebody as an athlete, it's because they don't know where to put him. It's kind of a catch-all. It's like everybody fits in this neat little box, and these are the extra guys. And a whole bunch of athletic people are completely different type players, and we're going to try and rank all of those guys. You can't do that. This kid, Dylan Edwards, is a true athlete. And the fact that he can line up at running back, he can line up at slot receiver. You could probably put him out wide. You can run him on jets. You can run him on screens. You can do a lot of the stuff that Ole Miss did with Dexter McCluster, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But first, thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day. So the calculus for this has changed. We're talking about a Dexter McCluster 2.0 type player, so that is why it had to change. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all of that screaming and shouting? We'll make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you each and every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming and yelling. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every single day. All right, so I've said 2 or 3 times already that Dylan Edwards is basically Dexter McCluster 2.0, and that is absolutely a like-for-like comparison. And also, if you go back and if you want to think about it, heck, there was a tweet yesterday from On3 ranking Noel Devine as the 3rd best high school film of all time. Dylan Edwards, he favorably compares to Noel Devine. I mean, when you look at the highlights of what's happened, Noel Devine is the greatest high school football video that I've ever seen. It was 7 minutes of pure magic. It is somebody that was better than who he was playing with, and he made people look foolish. Dylan Edwards is almost to that level where he played high school football in Kansas because that's where he's from, Kansas. So that's the reason you're going to hear that Kansas is an option or Kansas State, and that's happening. But he absolutely made people look silly with his speed and his quickness and all of the stuff that you would expect from Dylan Edwards. You look at him, he catches a swing pass, or he might be out in the slot for receiver. The coach at the high school in Kansas, unbelievably smart, because even he saw the benefit of taking a player like Dylan Edwards and moving him around on the field. A really good football player that possesses a lot of the same attributes as Dexter McCluster. Can you believe Dexter McCluster? I think he got to Ole Miss in 2006. So it's like 18 years ago from this football season, Dexter McCluster was on campus. Where has time gone? I was sitting in the stadium as the video guy when Ole Miss played Vanderbilt in 2006. This is when Ed Orgeron saw that he had a really great player in Dexter McCluster and he needed to be moving around. The ball needed to be in Dexter's hands as much as possible. So he put Dexter McCluster back at kickoff return. And this was in, I think, Dex's true freshman year. Vanderbilt kicked off. Dexter got it, brought it out of the end zone. I can remember it as plain as day. It was the far hash from where I was standing. He went up there. A block got missed on the kickoff return. And somebody hit Dexter so hard. And it's been very rare that I've seen people get hit this hard that it genuinely made me scared. Dexter got hurt. And basically the Monday after that, we had our special teams meeting the Monday after that in the team room. And Ed Orgeron was talking about that, and we were showing videos. And right before we got to that play, he basically stopped it. They cut on the lights for everybody. And he went into a diatribe about basically, if you don't do your job, you almost got him killed. But that was the last time that Dexter McCluster was the kickoff person. That was Ed Orgeron learning exactly how to use this player. Also, that was probably a good meaning because I don't know if Dexter ever took another solid hit the whole time that he was in college. But the point of that is Ed Orgeron, as limited of a head coach as he was, saw that getting the ball in Dexter McCluster's hand as much as possible was beneficial to him. That is the same situation with Dylan Edwards, and you would see that same thing happen at Ole Miss. Now, I would not want Dylan Edwards to return kickoffs for the reason that we just talked about. I every time he's back there, I'd be having flashbacks. But I think in the punt game, he would do a really good job and would be really exciting. I think that him as a slot receiver who in the last game of Ed Orgeron's time at Ole Miss, okay, this is the 2007 Egg Bowls. It was the Derek Pegues Many Happy Returns game where they ran kind of a funky offense with Brent Schaefer. Everybody remember Brent Schaefer or Brent Schaefer? They ran a kind of a funky offense that day. And what they did was either Marche Green, who ended up moving to cornerback under Houston Nutt, or Dexter McCluster. One was a slot receiver and the other was the running back, depending on the formation. And they could either run it and they can do all of that. Hugh Freeze actually called the offense that day. That's the reason it looked so different. Ole Miss offense was kind of working pretty well. That was going on. And if Ole Miss could have leaned into it a little bit more, a little bit earlier in the season, they would have saw the value of Dexter McCluster as a true running back, getting the ball in his hands. I say all of that to say this. Lane Kiffin will not have that problem. And Dylan Edwards, if he chose Ole Miss, would be a toy for Lane Kiffin that would be a marriage for both of them that would probably get Dylan Edwards drafted in the first round. It would make Ole Miss's offense one of the most explosive in the history of college football, depending on with the pieces they already have in place. And it would absolutely add electricity. My only question would be about this. If he comes in, do you still recruit and sign Trent Howland as the thumper, as the big back? Because I've talked about that several times of what a big back could do for this offense. I think that Lane Kiffin wants the Ole Miss offense to be able to go fast 80% of the time, but be able to slow it down when they need to. I talked with Michael Borky, and he said the same thing. When Ole Miss plays Kentucky in October or September, whenever that game is, let's say Ole Miss is up by 14 in the third quarter. Ole Miss just wants to take the air out of the balloon at that point. They don't want to go fast. They want to limit possessions, especially with that defense. You can see why they would be interested in a 4-minute style offense. So it'll be interesting to see that. I'm going to follow this Dylan Edwards stuff pretty great because, in my opinion, he's not a feature back. Nobody is going to recruit him that needs a feature back. What he is a luxury piece, and you might be the greatest luxury piece in the history of luxury pieces, because you can take this offense the way it sits right now, not even taking Trent Howard, the way it sits right now. And this is a top 5 offense in college football. If Dylan Edwards goes to Ole Miss under Lane Kiffin, we may be talking about the top offense in the history of college football. That is the difference this luxury player would make on Lane Kiffin's offense. Lane Kiffin, with this athlete, a 4-3 slot type player that can play in the backfield as well, with excellent hands, Ole Miss would be unguardable, especially with Tre Harris on the outside and Deion Smith and Caden Prieskorn. Especially with those pieces, the offense would become unguardable. People are going to ask also, isn't so-and-so a threat to transfer if this player comes in? Yes, and the answer is I don't care. Because to me, a player like Dylan Edwards and what he can bring in is far more than whoever is going to be going out. And if our goal is actually making it to the playoff and winning a national title, Dylan Edwards makes Ole Miss more than a legitimate national title contender. The Ole Miss Georgia game at that point kind of becomes what Ole Miss or what Alabama and LSU was in 2011. Really interesting stuff. And I think everybody needs to start getting fired up and realize what's happening right here. Because if Ole Miss can land this player with the pieces they already have, they have a chance to be special. They have a chance to be really special. And I'm here for that. I am absolutely here for that. Really interesting stuff. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day. You know, Lane Kiffin isn't the only portal king, apparently, as Chris Beard is on a heater right now. Guys, I need all of you to listen up for this huge announcement. I have been tracking the leaderboards every single day, keeping my eye on the scores, putting all of my heart into it, and I'm super pumped to announce I'm finally on top. That's right. Obviously, I'm talking about the hit mobile game Monopoly Go. You've probably heard about it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great mobile twist on the classic Monopoly, and you can play anywhere, anytime. You explore hundreds of Monopoly boards from Las Vegas to Camelot to the freaking moon, all the while raking in a huge fortune. You can charge rent on iconic properties just like classic Monopoly. And for your buddies, if you want to get at them, you can pull bank heists on them to take their money or take a wrecking ball to their landmarks. But my favorite part is the leaderboards where you can see who's a Monopoly tycoon and who is a wannabe. So go get yourself on the charts, download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store and Google Play. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available in the free Fire TV channels app. Be part of history. All right, Lane Kiffin isn't the only portal king that is on Ole Miss's campus. And they got a commitment just yesterday from Shapadulla. He is a point guard out of Virginia Tech, averaged 16.4 points, 4.3 rebounds, 4.6 assists. He went over 30 multiple times over the course of the season, had several games over 20 as well. He's a really, really good basketball player. There's no way you can get around it. And the fact that Ole Miss got him in, that is a testament on the NIL collective and Chris Beard recruiting. Ole Miss coming in at point guard, Shapadulla, Dre Davis, Devin Smith, Malik Dia, Michael Brown-Jones, those 5 players as a starting 5 would put Ole Miss in probably a better situation than they were even a year ago. Add into the fact that Jamin Brakefield is sitting right there, that Juju Murray is still there, and a couple other players as well. They're going to keep adding, but you can see how this basketball team has gotten a little bit better. And the team went from like 14 wins to 20 wins or something like that over the course of 1 year. I'm expecting them to take another jump as well. Shapadulla is a good player. When you look at his highlights on YouTube, you can absolutely see him make play after play after play. And that's a really big deal. Now, another thing is Pop Isaacs, the point guard out of Texas Tech. He averaged 15-8, 3-2, and 3-5. And he is another one that is coming this way potentially. I've heard many people say that it looks pretty good. We'll see how it goes. But he is a guy that with Shapadulla, the point guard position is going to be in good shape. After playing last season essentially without a point guard, Ole Miss will have two. So if they bring him in, maybe another player or two, you can see where this roster has a chance to be completely retooled. And I'm pretty excited about that. All of them are really good from outside the arc. Even the big men are good from outside the arc. And you can see where three-point shots are going to rain, essentially. It's going to be like, I don't know, Dusty from the Ben Stiller movie, Let It Rain, that guy. It's silly. Anyway, but good players on the outside, but there's an inside game that has been recruited as well. We'll see who else Chris Beard brings in. So that is what we learned this week. We learned that Ole Miss got two commitments from Jacory, Croskey, Merritt, and Henry Parrish. We learned that they had a visit that went pretty well with Trent Howland. Ole Miss is showing up on the list for Dylan Edwards and competing with Kansas State, apparently. And earlier we saw Ole Miss and Miami popping up as well. But Ole Miss and Kansas State being the leaders, that makes a lot of sense. Ole Miss is the contender. You have a legit shot at a national title. You have the innovative offense with a quarterback coming back and Lane Kiffin. You can see why Dylan Edwards would want to get there. And the same thing of exactly why you would want to have him. It's a match made in heaven. But if that doesn't work out, he's from Kansas, so Kansas State would make a good bit of sense for him. And let's just be completely real about this. Kansas State has a pretty good history of dealing with smaller running backs when you look at what they've done over the last 20 or so years. Even going back to Darren Sproles, they've had a good run with smaller running backs. We learned that basketball-wise, 5 commitments in a little over a week, ending with a true point guard that, let's face it, Shapadulla was a really, really big get. And when you see what's coming back on the roster and what's happening, this basketball team is going to get better and better and better and better. So we'll see exactly how that goes as well. Should be a lot of fun. Enjoy what's happening. Pay attention to Twitter. It looks like Tyler Barron is visiting Miami. We talked about him yesterday. We mentioned that Miami was someplace that might put the pressure on him. It looks like that is happening as well. I'm pretty fired up about where Ole Miss is currently on the defensive side of the ball with or without him, but Ole Miss should try to get him if they can. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen. We have the most perspective surrounding Ole Miss sports, and it is one of the many reasons we are the number one podcast, and thank you for that. But for your second listen, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover each and every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. For those of you on YouTube, though, we'll send you there right now. Have a good weekend, everybody. Hotty toddy.